Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
Welcome to SportKidz, the podcast, a team get-together in the element of team sports. A podcast if you have a child or children, grandchildren playing sports, or if you are the quarterback of the high school football team. You need to jump on board. SportKidz, the podcast, putting fun back into sports.
And we welcome you from San Diego. Hello, everyone. I'm Felix Taverna. Welcome to the initial episode of SportKidz 2020. We'll take an in-depth look of what's happening around the world, inside the world of youth sports. And my first guest is a longtime friend, a mentor of mine, a high school basketball coach that did it all back in the state of Pennsylvania. And he's here to share his experiences with youth. Also, the father of two Division I college basketball coaches, Sean Miller at Arizona, Archie Miller at Indiana. My friend, Dr. John Miller, joining us on SportKidz 2020. Dr. John, how are you on this Saturday?
I'm fine.
So good to have you along with us. And, this has been a real topsy-turvy type of week that has generated itself in the world of sports, all sports. We can't really eliminate any of them. Perhaps maybe thoroughbred horse racing still running, but what do you make of all this in regard to what has happened this week?
Yeah, it's unprecedented. Never really gone through something like that. We had an energy crisis back 10, 15 years ago. That they shut everything down because of cold weather, and we played our games at the Dome and in central locations. But other than that, I've never seen anything quite like this.
Dr. John Miller, you are a legend in the state of Pennsylvania, a 25-year-old Pennsylvania high school career coaching basketball. You started in our hometown of Elwood City, which had two high schools, Riverside High School and Elwood City High School. You coached Riverside High School, I believe, starting in 69 or 70. That's 1969 or 1970. And you racked up 657 wins coaching high school basketball. Must be a great tribute to all the hard work that you put in building your regimen and your program.
Well, it's just a love of the game. I started right in 70 as the first high school. I actually came out of college in 65, 66, somewhere in there, and had a grade school junior high job at Moon Township, and then came to Riverside as the head coach, and sort of been coaching basketball ever since.
What a display of championship that you brought to each and every one of your teams. In the state of Pennsylvania, the high school scholastic sports is governed by the WPIAL. That's Western Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic League. You won 8 WPIAL championships. You won 4 state championships. Your team, where you went from Riverside, you developed a new program. Was that a new school for you in Beaver Falls called Blackhawk?
Yes. Blackhawk was just getting started, and we were like sort of the perimeter of Beaver Falls. And, lo and behold, actually started out the first year 1-21.
And then you went on to win 111 state section wins. That lasted almost a decade, from 1990 to 1999. So what was the key ingredient of turning around a program that was just in its infancy to becoming a stronghold, an ironclad one in the state of Pennsylvania basketball?
Well, I just think generally the easiest way of saying it was just the love of the game. I was willing to put in a phenomenal amount of hours and build from the grade school all the way up. And to this day, as we speak, I believe in the same thing. If I was starting over again, you have to get down in the grade school and develop the love of the game and let it move on into the middle schools and in the junior high schools. But if you don't have that underneath structure, it's difficult in the public system especially. Now, in the parochial schools, you could kind of recruit a little bit and get people to come in or whatever, but in the public school, you're pretty much dictated by whoever you have, attending that school. So you really, if you don't start down in the lower grades, success might be mediocre.
Dr. John Miller from Chippewa, just outside of Beaver Falls, the city that Joe Namath made famous, ladies and gentlemen, joining us on SportKidz 2020. Dr. John, you have two sons and a daughter. Both your sons, Sean and Archie, are Division I basketball coaches. Sean coaching at Arizona, Archie at Indiana. You have a daughter that won a state basketball championship in the state of Pennsylvania. But I want to talk about your two boys. How fulfilling and rewarding is it to be able to be the sire, as we would say in horse racing, of these two fine young men and watching them coach Division I basketball teams?
Well, it's gratifying. I think as they both mature and get deeper and deeper into coaching, it becomes more frustrating. I think watching them and pulling for them. Of course, you want them to win every game, but it doesn't quite happen that way. But it's very, very interesting to see how people are as the years have moved on. Sean's in 20-some years, 25. 11 at Arizona, and Arch is just finishing his third year at Indiana, and then he had a nice run at Dayton. So they've both been around for a while, but you've watched the success and then the mediocre years that they've had. Most of the time they've had successful programs rolling, but it's interesting to watch people. And my take, after many, many years of observing, watching, coaching, is it pretty much comes down to, with people, the W. If you're winning, you're going to be, in most cases, liked, loved, and if you're not winning, they're going to turn on you. It's as simple as that.
As I mentioned, you had an illustrious career in coaching basketball, no matter where you were. And you developed some key players. Dante Calabria, who won a national championship with University of North Carolina, was a part of your high school basketball team. Danny Forson, Kenyon Martin. But you also had the pleasure of coaching the late Kobe Bryant in the 1996 McDonald's All-American game that was held in Pittsburgh. What was he like?
He was wonderful to coach. He just tried to do really whatever you wanted. You had him for a week, and you got a chance to be around him and kind of study him a little bit. And he was kind of an interesting character because he was one of the few guys that were on the docket, like coming straight from high school to the pros, and he was trying to make a decision really on what he was going to do, whether he had his mind made up or not. At the McDonald's game, he just pretty much was a fun-loving guy, and we had an enjoyable week with him. Rip Hamilton was on that team, and pretty enjoyable situation. He pretty much, whatever you wanted him to do, that's what he was going to do.
When you looked at him, you're a coach. You eye talent. You develop talent. You have that extra sense when you see somebody on the basketball court. But you're all around different All-Americans throughout the country. They're all over, and they come into to play a game, East versus West, I would assume. Was he any different than any of the others?
I would say yes, from a standpoint of he got the ball from like mid-court going towards the basket, it was pretty much over. I mean, he could just cover so much ground that you normally don't see. One move and two dribbles, and he would be right on the rim. And you sort of, he looked a little bit different, than some of the other guys.
Dr. John Miller from Western Pennsylvania joining us on SportKidz 2020. 657 wins, 280 losses. That's like a 70% win percentage. 583 games, 29 years at Blackhawk. You also had a 6-year stint at Riverside High School, and you continue to stay connected to the game, Dr. John, and you continue to teach kids. I was wondering, and this is the reason why we want to do SportKidz 2020, because I'm an advocate of developing our youth, and I am a disciple of the basketball. So I've always had basketball in my DNA. And I see era of athletes come and reach the pinnacle and continue to show exuberance as far as athletic ability. I was wondering, over the years, you had to sort of notice that kids are changing. Have they changed that much over the years per your eye?
Well, I don't think it's as much the kids changing as much as the adults who govern them have changed, and which leads to the way the child thinks. And, back in my day, whatever the coach said or whatever the adult person said, you pretty much followed the rules. And if you didn't, you paid. Today, it's not that way. Today, it's more like if I'm not getting my own way, I think I'm going to move over and jump over on this other ship. And if that doesn't work, then I might just jump again over on another ship. And, sort of the days of just reaching back, digging in, working extremely hard, I'm going to prove to you that I can do it, seems to be waning. And basically, I'm not so sure that it's the child, the athlete. It's more like whoever's in charge of him is dictating what's going to take place. And so that, the end result is they keep moving around based on, let's look at even if you start up in the college ranks, the transfer portal. Today, how many are transferring, back and forth, and it's astounding, really. I think it's like in college basketball today, it's over 400 to 500. 500 people have transferred over. You say, well, why is that happening? Because it's happening down in the amateur, AAU division, and even in the high school ranks today. I don't get my way. I'm not going to play for this school. I'm going to try to move over here. I'm going to try to play on another school. And so society today is dictating it. And then I guess what we're all looking for is, why is that happening? Basically, it's the almighty dollar. Because today, so many parents are so keyed up on, I got to get that scholarship. I got to get that, this is going to lead me to the NBA. And players, on the men's side right now coming out of college. I mean, it's just Power 5 schools. Everybody thinks they're going to the NBA. And it's dictating so many things that take place. So I don't know. That's what I see. That's where the changes are at.
And I feel the same way. I believe, and I've always said this, and I've spoken in front of groups and talked about this, that we have allowed youth sports to become professionalized, adulterated, and stolen from our kids. And I am a firm believer, after endless amounts of hours, days, months, years of studying this, that I see the common denominator of the disconnect being with the parents. It's the helicopter and the lawnmower parents, where I don't know if it was you, Dr. John Miller, who's joining us, renowned basketball coach and mentor of mine going back to my high school days growing up. Always admired what this man brought to the basketball court. I knew he was something special. Didn't know he was that special, however, because he really bloomed after I left the state of Pennsylvania at a school called Blackhawk, which was dominant in Western Pennsylvania basketball. But what I've always felt, that the helicopter and the lawnmower parents that are really get involved and live through their child in any sport, and they force that child to have a very unpleasant experience because it's more to their gaining than to the child enjoying the sport. And I see this quite a bit. And I don't know if it was you that was telling me in a previous conversation, or maybe someone else that shared this story with me, that it's very common for young adults that are playing in youth sports to jump frequently from AAU team to AAU team, just exactly what you said, in order to get what they want.
Yes, it's a terrific trend right now that's going on in almost all facets of AAU.
When you look at the whole landscape of youth sports, I personally believe that there's some culprits. I see it happening. I'm involved here in San Diego with youth sports. I am coaching some young 9th, 10th, even 7th and 8th graders on the side to play the game. I'm teaching them from what I've learned from my mentors, you being one, Eddie McCluskey being another, the beloved and my closest friend in life, the late Jerry Tarkanian. I've picked their brains forever. I've watched them do what they do so well on the basketball court. But when I see the culprits, I see these travel teams, I see AAU, and I see what's going on within those ranks. Is AAU responsible for all the turbulence that we are experiencing in youth sports?
Well, I think they're right smack in the middle of it all. And some of it is for positive reasons, but a lot of it is for negative. There are people gaining, let's say money out of, a 7th, 8th grade group. You're saying, well, how could that be? Because they feel like in 2 more years the player will be, really, really recruited highly, and then I'm going to pocket something out of that. And that's going on. I think that's going on in a lot of places. The other thing that really sits right out there on top of the heap would be the shoe companies, because they have the money and they can toss some money around to certain people which garners I'm going to come play on this group or I'm going to go over on that group. And so I think the shoe companies are involved sometimes on a negative issue.
Dr. John, you coach AAU back in Western Pennsylvania. I don't know if it's near the Pittsburgh area, but it doesn't make a difference. You're still involved AAU. Have you seen this gangster mentality somewhat where that, as you mentioned, teams come in and they're donned in the brand new sneakers and the warm-ups and, you know, they're funded by so-and-so and this person gets to be traveling with them, you know, and it's sort of a signal that's running rampant. I've seen AAU tournaments, and I think I shared this with you, where that I've seen what goes on there, and these kids are paraded around like they're cattle, and they're dragged over to coaches, and everybody's looking for that star player. We say nothing. We do not demand a stage, and those who want to see our children experience the best in the world of sports, we simply complain, and then we watch our kids blow out. They just blow out and they burn out.
Right.
And they lose interest because there's politics. I have parents coming to me all the time talking with me and what's going on with their travel teams and the coaches and so forth and so on. So that's really unfortunate. But I don't want to talk about the unfortunate things on SportKidz 2020. What I want to talk about is you, and that's John Miller, Dr. John Miller, who is a longtime advocate for coaching basketball and teaching basketball, and there's a difference. I see guys that are standing on the sidelines and they say, I'm the coach, and they do nothing. And, you know, you're not the coach. You're just a figure to govern these kids. You're not coaching anybody. You're just sitting there, standing there, doing nothing. But I want to get back to the skill level. Your son, Sean, was on the Johnny Carson show, I think, as an 8-year-old. And you were on That's Incredible. He was on That's Incredible with, I think, Fran Tarkenton, if I stand correct as well, dribbling a basketball. You conditioned your son in the same mold that Press Maravich conditioned Pistol Pete Maravich by making sure Sean was going to be the most fluid, fundamental basketball player. What kind of drills did you lead him to?
Well, we at a very, very young age, say clean down around 6, 7 years old, just did a lot of dribbling like downstairs in our basement. And so for probably 6 to 8 months solid, all we did was just work on little dribbling drills in the basement, you know, dribbling around cones, doing different things. But picked up a lot of drills as he grew and got older off of Press Maravich. However, our mentality and the way we did things was completely different than the way Pistol Pete did it. The pizzazz and that type of atmosphere, I would never let him go in that direction. We were more or less, go practice, do what you have to do. We're fundamentally going to beat you, and we're going home. It's not going to be very much really like Showtime. And even though he did get on, like say Johnny Carson or That's Incredible, and had a lot of avenues open. We were doing some half times of pro games and different things. He just would be an unassuming guy that just did those things, and then back home, and we went to work again. And we're going to let the playing do the talking. And hopefully all these drills and things that we were working on would lead to becoming a good player. And that's pretty much how we've done it for over 30-some years.
Dr. John, go ahead.
A lot of times, like a Sean Miller doing the halftime of, say, the Celtic 76er game, pro game. He's going to come out and do the halftime at, say, 12 years old, 11 years old. You know, it was kind of big. There's Dr. J out there, and he's shaking hands with Dr. J. He gets a chance to see the guy, but come back home, that being a Sunday, and then come back home, go to school on Monday, really not even mention it.
Amazing life that you've had. 2 sons, Division I coaches, doing very good. I think Sean is in his 12th year at Arizona. Prior to that, he was at Xavier. Archie was at Dayton. He built that culture there, and that's unfortunate. We won't be able to see Dayton, perhaps Indiana, or even Arizona play forward in March Madness. But I want to get back to the area of Beaver County. And Beaver County in Pennsylvania was all football. It was the cradle. It was the cradle of quarterbacks in Pittsburgh and in the regions that surround it. Montana, Marino, Namath, Blanda, Unitas. Do I have to name any more? It was something in the water back there in Beaver County. Pistol Pete Maravich and his father, Press Maravich, got the nickname Press Maravich because he delivered the local newspaper, the Pittsburgh Press, and he became a high school basketball coach there. And then Pete was born in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. Rest his soul, because I think about Pete, and I've researched Pete, and I've watched him, and I've reviewed tape on him and the drills that his father put him through. And his father was extremely relentless of Pete dribbling 2 basketballs, a blindfold, doing whatever drill that his father thought was necessary. Well, Pete Maravich was an outstanding college basketball player. Freshmen were not allowed to play at LSU during that time. In the 3 years he played at LSU, he's still the all-time leading scorer in collegiate basketball. I think he averaged 38, 43 points a game. I can't even recall. I know it's really high before the three-point shot. But have we gotten away? And do you see that these common-day coaches that are coaching kids, and by the way, before I forget, I wanted to shout out and pay you some really good kudos for when you started at Blackhawk. You created the junior Blackhawk program, or the Blackhawk program for kids that were in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And by the time they got to you, they already knew your system. And I applaud you for that. Getting to these young kids. I had the pleasure of working with some 7th and 8th graders this year. 2 of them never played basketball before, so I was up against it, but they really loved it, and they really had some skills and talent, so I enjoyed it more than they did. But when you look at the coaches today, do you roll your eyes back and say, what are these guys teaching, or is the coaching on the youth level pretty good?
I sort of roll my eyes a little bit. I think everybody today, or many today, I won't say everybody, they're looking for the quick fix. We want to get a little bit of a kind of showtime thing. I'm tossing tennis balls up in the air, and I'm dribbling the basketball, and I'm doing all these. I always say, we just want to work on ABC. We don't want to work on XYZ. And I think today there's a lot of trainers and people out there that they got to keep changing it up a little bit, so they're doing meaningless things instead of just working on crossover and a lefty hook. A crossover and a righty hook. I teach people how to shoot a layup from 6 different angles. It's like, hey, that's too boring. Same way with shooting free throws. Sean Miller shot 100 free throws every day from 9th grade to 12th, 1,400 days. Never missed 100 free throws every day, every single day. To the point where even in high school, some of the people would just smile and say, man, he's crazy, or his dad's crazy. But it was just a little system that we had And if you shoot 100 free throws, it takes about 18 minutes. So I would always say, like, it's only 18 minutes out of your time just to knock out 100 free throws. So what do you think his free throw shooting percentage was as he got into high school? I can tell you exactly what it is. 224 for 244. That's 93.3%. So his senior year in high school, he shot 244 free throws. He made 224, 93.3. I think it was a state record, but I'm saying this to you. We were so busy and could care less, we never even put it in the ranks. Like, so I don't think anyone in Pennsylvania even knows that he was 93.3 because we didn't really care. We were just about our team winning.
And today, a parent might talk to that child and say, "Hey, look, you're shooting 93.3, but you missed 20 free throws. What's going on?" The ride home, which is very, very dangerous in youth sports. Parents getting to these kids after these kids perform whatever sport they play, and they get the ride home, and then you got to hear from the mother or the father or both about, how you messed up or how you missed a block or how your kick was off center or how your shooting wasn't in range, whatever the case might be. The parents really are a problem, but there is no substitute for great skills. My idol was probably a man that you chased in the state of Pennsylvania. I think he won 7 or 8 state champions, and he coached up at Farrell, Pennsylvania, Eddie McCluskey, where I became obsessed with Eddie McCluskey and watching how he coached and how he brought teams that were a little smaller in school capacity and enrollment, and then strike down the Goliaths. I recall and I researched and read where Eddie McCluskey in Farrell High School, which was a student enrollment about 600 in the state of Pennsylvania, playing at the top level in the top section of Pennsylvania, and that was Section 3. And there was Aliquippa and Beaver Falls and Newcastle and Sharon and Butler and Ambridge. They were all jammed into this one section, which was dominant in high school basketball in the mid-'60s, early '70s, and beyond. Section 3 was the section of state champions. 4 in 5 years won the state championship from this little section in western Pennsylvania in an era where football was king. See, basketball didn't catch on. It was a football type of mentality. That's why the Steelers brand is so great, because it trickles down to high school, where a Beaver Falls Newcastle game would draw 14 or 15,000 at the high school level. But what I want to get back into talking about is that this Eddie McCluskey, he taught defense and he taught fundamentals. And I think the key to being a good basketball player is that you can have all that glitter and showtime, but if you don't have the basic fundamental base, then you're not really going to excel in areas of the game. What was more important for you in conducting your practices, and what was the key to conducting great practices? Did you have a regiment? I remember reading about Eddie, and Eddie had that great '69 team that won the state championship with the late Barry Canturner, who was from Elwood City, and his father transferred him to Farrell. The late Davy Johnson, which was one of the greatest basketball high school players I've ever had eyes on, and Randy Crowder, who went to the University of Pittsburgh to play football. By the way, I wanted to shout out that John Miller's son, Sean, was a tremendous point guard at the University of Pittsburgh. He stayed home, and Archie went to North Carolina State and also had the same skill set that his brother had. But Sean was just like a little a freak of nature without any question. But Eddie McCluskey once mentioned, and I read where that he did the same thing practice every day. Every day, that team did the same thing. What was your regimen like?
Well, number one, when I began coaching, and the guys I was studying, I was trying to really look at the best guys, and so obviously I researched McCluskey. So I worked his basketball camp up at Gannon University. I worked his camp for 8 summers in a row. So I got to know all about Eddie McCluskey and what he did, his defense, and so I pretty much, I think, followed the same structure. A fierce defensive team, and the defense led to a lot of offense. And so I think a fierce defense stopping the other team sometimes also ignites your offense because you're taking the ball off of people or you're forcing them to turn it over, and it ignites your own offense. So I'm a huge Eddie McCluskey disciple.
So am I. And, my pal, and I think about him every day, Dr. John. I think about how lucky I was to have the opportunity to become his friend, the late Tark the Shark, Jerry Tarkanian. And when we would sit down, I would pick his brain endlessly for hours. And one day he said to me, "It's unfortunate we didn't meet while I was coaching." And I said, "Why is that, Tark?" He said, "Because you would have been my number one assistant, because nobody has the DNA of a basketball coach like you. Yeah, and basically it's the truth, and it was just one of the highest compliments that anybody could ever pay me for something that I've always studied and always loved." And Tark would share with me, and I would pick his brain, like I mentioned, and I would be really, really at him, asking him a lot of questions. And I would ask him, like, how long do you spend coaching defense? And he says, 30 minutes a day. And I said, 30 minutes. And I go, well, is it the beginning of the practice? And he said, yes. And I says, are there any basketballs on the court? He said, no. I bring my team out, I stretch them, and I work them defensively without a basketball. They don't see a basketball. Then we roll out the basketballs. And I asked him, like, when you led the nation like 7 years in a row with scoring. You had, the great Armin Gilliam from Pittsburgh. You had Jeep Kelly came out from Shenley. You had Keith Starr, another Pennsylvania player that played for Tark at Pitt. Tark had a pipeline, the Pitt, for Timmy Gergovich, and they just sent people out from Pittsburgh to be on Vegas, and he would play his defense. He would play his defense so tough and mighty, man to man, where when he led the nation in scoring collegiately at UNLV, he shared with me that they weren't an offensive team. He generated points from his defense. He had a thing called the Easy Eight. He put players in, and their whole motto and mindset would be score quick 8 points off the D. And they'd press, and they'd score on fast breaks and turnovers and what have you. And his defense was very, very solid. Are we seeing the same type of defense that we have grown up to watch the coaches like an Eddie McCluskey, Jerry Tarkanian, Dr. John Miller? Have we seen coaches go way back in regard to teaching how important it is to become a good defensive team?
Well, I think the modern-day guy today, is the Bennetts. Dick Bennett when he was at Wisconsin. And then, of course, his son, Tony, has just taken over and is running the Virginia setup. And I think those guys have dictated the pack line defense, and which, like Sean runs that, Arch also runs it. But I think those are teams that, usually the team that has the good record is they're really tough defensively. I look at Michigan State with Izzo. His guys are hard, tough. They really come after you defensively and rebounding. And I don't think it's going to change.
Well, I went up to watch the Arizona, as you know, and the UCLA game, and Mick Cronin has brought that type of mindset to UCLA. And, some coaches are so defensive-minded that's all they know. I mean, if you watch a Virginia team, they're very ugly to watch on the most part because they play slow. And they get you to play ugly. That's what coaches do that are defensive heavy, as I would call them. But it's so important. I talked to a good friend who's a coach of a Big 12 team, and I shared with him 5 weeks ago. I said, and I won't mention his name, but I shared with him, your defense is horrible. I mean, I don't care how you score the basketball. If you score 2 and they come down and score 3, you're not doing anything great. You've got to be able to stop and get in the faces. And I've seen this in the Big 12 where it doesn't seem like the coaches are that interested in teaching defense. They're more looking for that breakaway, that slam dunk, that easy uncontested layup, whatever. All offense, no defense. I was going to ask you this about travel teams. I have had a lot of complaints from parents here in California that the demand for their child to play travel team basketball all year round and not play any other sport. And I'll follow up with that. With that, a lot of coaches are now saying that, hey, Johnny, hey, Jimmy, hey, Mikey, you either have to play one sport or the other. You either have to play basketball or football, soccer or track, but you can't do multiple sports. You have to zero in to one sport. Do you see that being that way back there in Western Pennsylvania?
I think it's heading a little bit in that direction. Today we just have more things. Back in the old days, think about it, you just had baseball, football, basketball. There wasn't really a whole lot of others. Where today, let's throw volleyball in there. Let's throw lacrosse in there. You know what I mean? You have more access now to swimming pools. You have a swimming program. So there's so many more sports to play, and there's not that many athletes to go around. And so, I think the coaches are trying to latch onto their guy because everybody wants them to go off and do something else. So you got a little tug of war going on. Back here, football's still very, very powerful, and they're not going to lose their grasp on the football end of things.
Well, here in California, I see a lot of high school parents getting their kids out of football. I can see that switch. I see that switch. Mm-hmm. I see that switch and that elimination of that football. I mean, it's still big. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, but it's coming. You're right.
I see lacrosse being much more of a sport for these young kids to play, and I see most kids leaving football going to soccer. Let me be perfectly clear with our audience. You are now coaching an AAU team. What's that like right now, and how old are those kids that you're coaching in your AAU program?
Well, it's all the way up. It starts at like 4th, 5th grade and goes all the way up to 17U. But 7 or 8 years ago, I switched over and started coaching the girls.
Nice.
And the reason that I did that would be it's just easier. It's easier coaching them. They listen, and they're trying to do exactly what you want them to do. And they seem to have more fun, really playing the game. They're trying as hard as they can to do what you want them to do. And lo and behold, the the style of play, whatever. I mean, it's really increased now. I mean, if you watch a girls' game now, it's not like the old days where it was kind of boring and they couldn't really do much. Today, you watch them play today, they're pretty good. They got a lot of good ones. On the boys' side, I see I really don't want to work that hard, or I don't really like what you're doing, so they jump ship on you. So I just sort of gravitated over and talked to girls, and so we have right now, this AAU group that I have, we have 32 teams. We have that many teams playing AAU. Now, this isn't AAU the way you're thinking at the highest level. Like last year, I had a 17U girls team. We had a 16 and 15. They all did pretty well. But we're not backed by any shoe company. We don't have to, if I go with, say, Under Armour, and I'm under the shoe company, now Under Armour's dictating that I have to go to Atlanta. I got to go to Dallas. I got to go to Kansas City. I got to go out to Vegas because I'm under their deal. And so I don't really want to do that because I'm thinking to myself, well, number one, the people that are going to get recruited, or if a girl goes to college, or even on the men's side, they're probably going to go to college somewhere around the Pennsylvania area. So why am I going to go clean out to Vegas with my teams and pay exuberant amount of money when most of the players that I have, they go to college, they're going to probably go to, New York, Maryland, over to Jersey, Maryland, right around the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. And I don't see too many of them being recruited. And if they are recruited, they're recruited by West Coast people. That makes it much, much more difficult. So for me, I'm trying to, number one, make it really fun. They really enjoy playing the game. I'm trying to teach them life skills of hey, we're getting you prepared to maybe go on to college. If you want to play basketball, great. If you don't, you still enjoy the experience of being a pretty good basketball player, and then, hey, I'm going to leave this and go on to college. Or if I'm a college, I have a chance of getting under scholarship, this is what it's going to be like, and then trying to develop the skill level to the point where it's a lot different on that girl's side because, you go to college, you start to play, or unless it's Power 5, there aren't that many people sitting in the bleachers. You're playing more like for the love of the game. You love to play the game of basketball, and you're going to play. Versus, I got to have 8,000 people sitting in the bleachers. It's a little bit different on the girls' side. And so I've learned over the course of time, they're great to work with. I mean, they enjoy the practices. They come in, they're ready to go. Whatever you tell them to do, they're going to try to do it. So I've stuck with it for 7 or 8 years, and we've probably put at least over 40 girls who are playing college basketball.
That is tremendous. That is mind-boggling and mind-blowing, and not a big surprise to me because I know anything that you would put your hands on that you would teach the game because you've always been a teacher. You were a former teacher for 25 years. You taught health, I do believe, at Riverside, if I stand correct. But you're a teacher, and a teacher and a teacher and a teacher all adds up to teaching. And if you teach the game of basketball, and I happen to agree with you about the women's game, Dr. John, I really do, because I had more pleasure of watching Connecticut play Notre Dame or South Carolina and watching the development of these young women. Each year, it seems to be there is one or two great shining stars in women's college basketball that just come out of nowhere. Kobe's friend, the girl from the University of Oregon, I watched her final game that she played, and she set the record for having 20,000 points, 10,000 this, 1,000 that, whatever the case might be, and she was just awesome, and I could see where you could get the pleasure of having the direct attention of your teaching to girls who really are going to pay attention and listen to you, because one of my pet peeves of the AAU here, and I think I might have shared this with you on a phone conversation that we had, was that there's too much ego and there's too much selling going on, and there's too much turbulence going on, rather than it's showcasing, it's showboating, it's parading, it's it's just that teams coming in, it's the ego, they want to be noticed, and it is costly for these teams to travel all around. But I think that we have gotten completely away from what these kids need. And I think we touched upon it here on this episode of SportKidz 2020. Skills fundamentals. I was going to ask you, you coached your daughter, and she won a WPIAL championship, correct?
Yeah, she had a couple of them. And in '99, my team won the state championship, and Saturday night, our girls won the state title. We won for the boys and the girls in '99.
Did you coach both?
She played on that team.
You didn't coach both?
No, I didn't coach both. I coached them in junior high coming up through.
You built a great program back there, and what a great family that you have, along with your wife and your 3 children. I would think you're about 76 right now. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yep, I was just 77 the other day.
God bless you. Happy birthday. We'll catch up when I'm back there, but I want to thank you, Dr. John Miller, legendary Pennsylvania high school basketball coach, joining us on SportKidz 2020. 8 WPIAL championships, 4 state championships, 111 straight section wins going from 1990 to 1999. The only team to beat them was Hopewell. And by the way, if you're a true Pennsylvanian, you know that the Heisman Trophy winner, Anthony the Hawk Dorsett, also known as Tony, our good friend, went to Hopewell High School instead of Aliquippa. 2 sons in college basketball, head coaches, Sean at Arizona, Archie in Indiana. He's still coaching AAU today. He really loves the game of basketball, and he is truly a superstar in my eyes. I want to thank you, Dr. Miller, for being on our radio episode of SportKidz 2020. And what are you going to be doing now without any basketball?
I don't know. I'm thinking about that. So we'll see. We'll figure something out.
We appreciate it. We'll catch up with you. We'll catch up with you real soon. Thanks for your time. Give my best to our man Tony Court, the mayor of Elwood City back there, and tell him that I hope to see both you guys my next trip back. Thanks so much, Dr. Miller.
Will do. Thank you for having me on. See you later.
You got it. Dr. John Miller on SportKidz 2020, 8 WPIL championships. He built the program. He built the fabric. He built the culture. He did it with skills fundamentals. Son Sean Miller was on the Johnny Carson show, dribbling 6 or 7 basketball. Archie's the head coach of Indiana. So it's sort of a family affair. Father's a coach. Both sons are coached. Daughter had a WPIAL championship, and also coached Kobe Bryant. How many folks could say that? 1996, the McDonald's All-American game in Pittsburgh. He coached Kobe Bryant. Had some great players. Dante Calabria, who his father was my idol at Aliquippa High School back in Pennsylvania, named Chad Calabria. But AAU, travel teams, parents, helicopter, lawnmower parents, really bring down high school sports. You've heard it from somebody who his whole life dedicated his whole life to teaching the game of basketball. I'm Felix Taverna for SportKidz 2020. We're happy that you're able to join us. We'll catch you next time here on SportKidz 2020.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children.
After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The World Link program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.
In the military, things can change in an instant. Your personal life is just the same. Just like you protect our country, you want your family protected. That's why thousands of military members trust Navy Mutual Life Insurance. Navy Mutual is nonprofit, providing current and former Navy, Marine, and Coast Guard families with life insurance, no sales fees, and no military service restrictions. Protecting members on active duty and beyond. Call 1-800-628-6011, 800-628-6011, NavyMutual.org, insuring those who serve.
Nowadays, internet devices are an integral part of your home. Everyone in your family has a smartphone, tablet, or a computer. Life is easier knowing that all your devices are secured and your family can surf the internet carefree. ESET Multi-Device Security Pack does just that. One license for all your devices. With ESET, it's simple to stay protected and save money. Enjoy safer technology with ESET Multi-Device Security Pack at ESET.com. That's ESET.com.
I've heard this is like one of the best pizza spots in town.
Yes, it is.
I'll do a slice of pepperoni, slice of vegetarian.
You got it.
And I will pay for all of that in 3 days.
In 3 days?
What's that mean? Well, wait, you accept credit cards. That money's not going to hit your account for 3 days anyway.
I need my money quicker.
At Chase, we hear you. With Express Funding, card payments are in your Chase account the next business day. Go to chase.com/expressfunding. Chase for business, so you can.
Compensated participation. All businesses are subject to credit approval. Not all clients are eligible for next business day funding, and additional terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
Tired of presentations with no impact, no inspiration, and no traction? Do dull speakers have you and your team disengaged and distracted by smartphones? Christopher McAuliffe brings energy, insights, and 2 decades of experience, delivered with punch, humor, and heart. Your team will leave energized, uplifted, and with a sense of purpose. Visit ChristopherMcAuliffe.com to bring some heat to your next speaking engagement. McAuliffe. ChristopherMcAuliffe.com.
Hey, it's Catherine from Listen Local Radio. Moe's Guitars has proudly served the San Diego music community since 1975. Specializing in guitars, basses, mandolins, banjos, and ukuleles, they buy, sell, trade, and consign. If you're looking for lessons, repairs, accessories, and cool gear, you found the right place. Located in downtown La Mesa Village, stop by and check out their digs or visit moesguitars.com or their Facebook page. MOZEguitars.com, 619-698-1185.